Sometimes the moment you expect to feel proud is the moment something inside you tightens. Not because you failed, because you didn't, because you finally rose. The first time I was promoted, nothing dramatic happened. No fight, no confrontation, no argument. Congratulations were said, but warmth left the room. If you're perceptive, you know what that feels like. The pitch changes slightly. The smile doesn't reach the eyes. The excitement lasts half as long as it should. It's subtle, but your body knows. And my body knew. Not anger, deflation. Like air released quietly from the exact place expansion was supposed to land. That's confusing. Because nobody attacked you. Nobody said anything harsh. But something shifted. That shift is the beginning of maturity. Because here's what most people misunderstand. Some people don't need to beat you. They just need you not to rise past them. Let's remove ego. Let's remove drama. Growth creates contrast. Contrast creates comparison. Comparison creates internal tension. And tension demands regulation. This isn't personal, it's biological. Humans track hierarchy instinctively. When someone close to you rises, your brain doesn't ask, "Is this morally good?" It asks, "What does this mean about me?" If the answer feels inspiring, celebration flows. If the answer feels threatening, contraction begins. Threat doesn't look like yelling. Threat looks like subtle energy shifts. And most threatened people don't consciously think, "I feel insecure." They just feel discomfort. And discomfort needs relief. There are two ways to relieve insecurity triggered by someone else's growth. Improve yourself or reduce the contrast. Growth takes effort. Containment is easier. That's the fork. Containment isn't loud. It looks like, "That's good, but don't forget where you came from." Be careful. Well, let's see how long that lasts. Silence, where enthusiasm used to live. It looks like someone changing the subject when you speak about progress. It looks like "stay humble" delivered with edge. It looks like less eye contact. It looks like joking that lands a little too sharp. It rarely looks like sabotage. It looks like narrowing. And here's why that matters. Belonging matters more than the winning. So when growth threatens belonging, your nervous system recalibrates fast. You don't consciously think, "I should shrink." Your body feels the contraction and says, "Do not expand here." That's the beginning of the split. This is where most people never go. When growth creates discomfort in important rooms, you adapt. You don't abandon your expansion. You compartmentalize it. Version 1, confident, expansive, free, forward. Version 2, measured, quieter, selective, contained. You don't call this fragmentation. You call it maturity. But living divided is expensive because over time you ask yourself, why does this room feel smaller than I do? That question is very dangerous because now you're not just navigating insecurity, you're navigating misalignment. The deflation wasn't about money. It wasn't about title. It was about realization. This version of me cannot fully live here. That realization is painful and clarifying. Growth doesn't just change status. It changes roles. And roles are how relationships stabilize themselves. If you were once the struggling one, the creative one, the emotional one, the dependent one, the underestimated one, your growth disrupts the emotional architecture of the relationship. The people who used to advise you loses position. The person who used to guide you loses relevance. The person who used to feel ahead of you now feels level or beneath you. That shift is destabilizing. Not because they hate you, because their identity was partially organized around your previous position. That's uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Power shifts don't need to be dramatic to be real. Sometimes they're silent, but they're felt. You no longer ask for advice the same way. You no longer defer. You no longer seek approval the same way. And when that difference disappears, someone's internal equilibrium shifts with it. And if they don't know how to regulate that loss of position internally, they regulate you. Subtly. That's containment, not aggression. Containment. Don't mistake this for a male problem. Don't mistake this for a heterosexual or homosexual problem. Don't mistake this for a corporate problem. This is human nervous system mechanics. This happens when a young woman begins earning more than her husband. Watch the micro shifts. The humor becomes sharper. The playfulness becomes edged. The must be nice comments slip in. Not because he wants to hurt her, because his role recalibrated. This happens when a man becomes emotionally literate in a friend group that bonded over avoidance. Suddenly, depth feels threatening. He's different now. This happens when someone in a minority community breaks out, builds financial stress, and returns home. They're told, don't forget who you are. But what's really being said is, your growth highlights my stagnation. It happens when an LGBTQ person moves from secrecy into composure. Confidence destabilizes those invested in silence. It happens when someone loses weight and friends stop inviting them out. It happens in churches, in corporations, in families, in marriages. Growth destabilizes fixed emotional systems, and unstable systems respond with pressure. So let's slow this down for a minute, because this is where the loneliness forms. It isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the moment you say something about your life and watch the reaction instead of feeling it. It's when celebration feels conditional. It's when support feels careful instead of generous. And you don't explode. You adapt. You share less. You explain less. You soften expansion. Not angrily, strategically. And then one day you realize, I don't feel like sharing here anymore. That realization, it's not dramatic. It's clarifying. And clarity hurts, because it means something changed permanently. Nobody talks about grief and growth, but it's real. You grieve the relationship you thought you had. You grieve the imagined celebration. You grieve the illusion of unconditional enthusiasm. And here's the hardest part. No one did anything monstrous. No betrayal, no affair, no screaming match, just shrinking capacity. That's harder to confront, because you can't justify anger. You just quietly recalibrate. That recalibration feels like isolation. And here's where your sentence comes back. Isolated, but steadier. Alone, but happier. Now let me confront something most people don't want to examine. Not every tone shift is insecurity. Sometimes it's you. Sometimes your rise isn't just expansion, it's compensation. Sometimes success awakens something old, a wound, a hunger, a need to finally be recognized. And that energy is detectable. You don't have to be arrogant to carry it. You just have to be unhealed. If you needed that promotion to repair something inside of you, people will feel the intensity of that need. If you needed that visibility to validate your worth, people will feel the pressure of it. Growth can be clean. Our growth can carry demand. Demand makes rooms uncomfortable. Demand say, see me. Clean growth says, I see myself. That difference is important. So let's pause here. Ask yourself, did you rise calmly? Or did you rise hoping everyone would finally notice? That's not condemnation, that's alignment. Because sometimes what you call their insecurity is your validation hunger meeting their comparison tension. That friction feels explosive. And if you don't own your part, you'll misread every contraction as hostility. Adult growth requires this. Own your hunger. Release your demand. Rise without seeking applause. So now let's talk about what happens next. When you feel deflated in important rooms, you build resilience. Resilience becomes independence. Independence becomes identity. I don't need applause. I don't need validation. I don't need permission. Well, that's true. But if you're not careful, resilience hardens. Hardening feels powerful. It feels clean. It feels contained. But beneath it, something subtle forms. I don't need anyone. That's the overcorrection. When belonging feels conditional, you detach from belonging itself. And that works for a while. You become steadier. You expect less. You move quietly. You don't bring winds into rooms that shrink themselves. But intimacy requires exposure. And if over-independence becomes your operating system, you stop exposing. You stop sharing. You stop allowing shared elevation. That's protective and isolating. Here's the paradox. When you rose and felt deflated, you chose clarity over conflict. That was mature. When you stopped sharing to protect peace, that was stabilizing. When you distanced instead of raging, that was controlled. But later, you recognize something subtle. You might have become too independent. That's not regret, that's reflection. Because over-independence creates internal messaging like, I'll handle it myself. I don't need encouragement. I don't require recognition. It lowers vulnerability. It lowers emotional risk. It lowers friction. But it can also lower connection. That's where growth becomes more nuanced. You don't want to shrink, but you also don't want to armor so heavily no one can access you. The mature move is integration. Not independence, not dependence, integration. The discipline of staying open, that's advanced emotional work. You rise, you seek capacity limits, you step back where needed, but you do not shut down your openness globally. You remain warm, but selective. You remain expansive, but discerning. You do not perform success. You do not hide it. You do not demand celebration. You do not avoid it. You allow it where it can live. That's psychological sovereignty. Not ego, not arrogance, not isolation. Sovereignty. So now I'm going to shift this outward. If you felt yourself tighten when someone else rose, pause before you minimize. Pause before you joke. Pause before you soften their achievement. Ask yourself, is their growth confronting something unresolved in me? Is their freedom highlighting my restraint? Is their courage triggering my fear? If the answer is yes, that doesn't make you small. It makes you human. But you must regulate inward. Do not regulate them. Do not shrink them to soothe yourself. Now flip it. If you are rising, ask yourself, am I steady in my expansion? Am I rising clean? Or am I secretly waiting for the room to finally validate me? Both sides must examine, or the cycle continues forever. Growth will always reveal something in others and in you. That's the unavoidable truth. When you rise, you are not just increasing income, visibility, confidence, or clarity. You are revealing capacity. Some people have the capacity to expand with you. Some do not. And capacity is not moral. It's developmental. You cannot shame someone into having more emotional bandwidth. You cannot debate someone into celebrating you. You cannot explain your way into being received by someone who feels threatened. You also cannot shrink yourself permanently to maintain outdated equilibrium. That's the core tension. This episode is not about choosing sides. It's about choosing maturity. Maturity says, I understand why that shift happened. It does not say, they're jealous and wrong. It does not say, I must be superior. Maturity also says, I will not shrink in rooms that cannot hold me. That's not ego, that's alignment. And alignment sometimes narrows environments. Here is the adult posture. You continue to grow. You do not announce your growth aggressively. You do not conceal it anxiously. You allow it. You let your life become evident. You stop requiring applause. You stop waiting for enthusiastic validation from those who don't have the capacity. You stop overcorrecting into isolation. You allow celebration where it exists. You reduce exposure where it contracts. You do not make dramatic exits. You do not carry silent resentment. You simply reposition your expectations. And expectation shifts are powerful because often the pain was not the contraction. It was your expectation of expansion. When expectation adjusts, resentment fades. Not instantly, gradually. And gradually is healthy. Now slow down. Ask yourself quietly, who tightened when you rose? Who expanded with you? When did you first begin editing yourself? What rooms feel smaller now? Where have you mistaken isolation for superiority? Where have you mistaken insecurity for attack? Where are you still craving applause? Where have you armored beyond necessity? Can you allow growth without demanding validation? Can you remain open without shrinking? Your rise is not betrayal, but it will feel like betrayal to someone who refuses to evolve. That is not your burden to manage. Their nervous system belongs to them. Your alignment belongs to you. Do not resent them. Do not harden towards them. Do not collapse towards them. Stand vertical. Growth narrows rooms. Maturity narrows resentment. Isolation can create steadiness, but integration creates strength. Rise clean, without demand, without apology, without armor. If the room tightens, let it. You don't have to. I'm Chris Willingham, and this is Without Permission.